It's Mozz! It's Chaz! We really want to be your friends. We hope this podcast never ends. It's Mozz! It's Chaz! As we talk about Jessica Jones.
It's better every time.
It does. Well, I finally got this song. This is an interesting point about the show. Because this is actually, those listening may have noticed, I've changed the song a bit. And it's interesting the way this song has played out. Because now of course we're parodying the theme to Patsy's TV show when she was sort of a teen Disney star, along with Brittany and the like back in the day, and Hannah Montana, Miley, that was her name, Miley Cyrus, and we are led to believe that in many ways Patsy Walker was meant to be part of that group. Now, and every time we've seen it before, the few times we've heard the theme song, it had this very strong rock sound to it, with the, it's Patsy, I really want to be your friend, I hope this day will never end, and that's what we've been seeing. Now, in this episode, we actually get Jessica singing the song, and rather than that, it has a much more sort of Patty Duke vibe, meet Patty, who's lived most everywhere, from Zanzibar to Berkeley Square. It's got that kind of a more playful, innocent sound to it. And that's what we've been using, because that's the song that stuck in my head, and which I always referenced every time I'd see, or when I was reading the Patsy Walker Hellcat comic that just came out, which is called It's Patsy Walker, a.k.a. Hellcat. I go, it's Patsy, it's Patsy, I really want to be your friend, I hope this day will never end. And when Jessica tries to bribe the morgue attendant in this episode, she sings it in that way. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get to the actual meat and potatoes of this episode, which is opening up pretty much where we left off last time, with Kilgrave booking it out of there, and as he books it out of there, he runs into Hogarth, and he has her stop the car. And again, this is one of these moments where you just see that power of Hogarth, of Kilgrave. One of the things I think we didn't touch on last episode was this kind of impressive seduction scene between Pam and Hogarth.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Which we kind of we totally forgot about.
You're right.
And man, I don't know. So okay, family show, but let's try to keep it. Let's try to be honest about what we're talking about here. Pam, and it's interesting because Pam kind of seems to be this promised honeypot to Hogarth throughout this, where you're kind of realizing that maybe, Hogarth she's this strong, tough gal, but you kind of feel like she's being led around by the short and curlies throughout this whole thing. And not to put too fine a point on it, Pam breaks out the short and curlies for this one.
Yeah.
And really, talks up what a powerful force Hogarth is. At the same time, we see her kind of melting before the physical attraction of Pam.
Yeah.
It is an interesting dynamic they play here, especially when we see what happens with Pam in this episode. But I'd be remiss if I overlooked that. This is an interesting episode. We get a lot of, and again, like I say, when we get to this hyperactive period of the shows in these next couple episodes, things get really fast. We get a lot of multiple storylines, a lot of multiple plot lines happening, and we see that basically Hogarth has Kilgrave, he's bleeding out, he's in a lot of pain, and he tells her to take him to someone to fix him up whom she trusts.
Right.
Meanwhile, Jessica has now realized she's immune. And you see, Patsy and the detective whose name I'm kind of blanking on all of a sudden,
Clemens?
Yeah, Clemens, saying, okay, here's how we're going to get the whole thing together. Oh, and by the way, we forgot to our opening credits. Tonight's episode, Jessica Jones, a.k.a. 1000 Cuts, directed by Rosemary Rodriguez, written by Melissa Rosenberg, who gets the Created By credit, along with Dana Barada and Mika Schraft, and, of course, good old Jenna Reback, our staff writer. I tell you, that Jenna Reback, she gets that credit every episode as the staff writer. I'm guessing she's doing a lot of polishing on this work. I'm guessing Jenna's probably a really great writer who has that workmanlike consistency that is going to get her far in this business. So I'm looking forward to seeing more work by Jenna Reback as we go forward. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, well, I like to, you see that. You see, when you see those, it's like Gerald McRaney in The Incredible Hulk. You see him and you say, this guy's an actor. This guy's a guy we know is going to be around for a while,
Yeah.
Anyway, moving right along. So, Clemens is totally on board now. He's like, yeah, I know crazy mind control, Kilgrave. How are we going to deal with this? They formulate a plan. Kilgrave's father is there, who still wants to cut his own heart out, but, he's resisting, because they have him tied up.
Yeah, he's being restrained.
Yeah, and he makes the point about, they always thought that you could create a vaccine, because as we say, and this is another reason why we have this new viral explanation for Kilgrave's power, that because his powers are viral, you could theoretically create a vaccine. And in this, we see that Jessica is perhaps the vaccine. She is a carrier for the vaccine of Kilgrave.
Right.
And that's pretty awesome. So they think that they could probably create the vaccine in 24 hours, which sounds like a huge unlikely thing, but we'll go along with it. We see, and I'm trying to get all of our plot lines together because there is a lot going on in this, and I don't want to bleed into the next episode too much. So,
no, but I think this is the point where we get Kilgrave and Hogarth back at Wendy's house.
Yes. So of course, Hogarth has to take Kilgrave to someone who can fix him up, whom she trusts, and she takes him to Wendy's house, her wife's house, the doctor. And you get this weird dynamic because, of course, Kilgrave got out of all of this. What caused Hogarth to cut the wire was her idea that Kilgrave would make Wendy sign the papers, because of course Wendy has this big, dangerous lie out there that basically one of her biggest cases she manipulated the jury. She did something untoward and illegal. I'm not 100% sure exactly what she did, but it seems to be a disbarable offense.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it seems like basically she had interaction with a jury member who led to the acquittal, Yeah. And I think they're intentionally vague about exactly what she did, but it was definitely untoward.
Right.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't matter what it was. It was just some general,
Yeah.
Piece of weird,
Mm-hmm.
But
And we get this moment here where you have Wendy and Kilgrave, because of course, and this is the thing about Kilgrave's power, is in the minute of it, you're all feeling fine like cherry wine. And, so Wendy's talking to Kilgrave like she's her oldest and dearest friend about how much she hates what Hogarth is putting her through.
This scene was so interesting because it always makes you wonder what he's provoking them to say and what they're really saying. And it's such an interesting dynamic because he has control of the entire situation. Mm-hmm. But Hogarth is sort of like the figurehead, explainer of what's happening. And it's such an interesting power structure. And then it's like you wonder if he's forcing Wendy to be as honest as she's being. Mm-hmm. And almost as if it's sort of a helpful thing for them in a way.
Well, yeah.
It starts that way at first.
Yeah, well, definitely Wendy. Who needs too much prompting to talk shade about their ex?
Yeah, right.
And to that extent, it's an interesting aspect of this because again, with what people want to say and what people do say,
right?
Kilgrave tells Hogarth to tell him something he doesn't know. Now, honestly, she could have said, the weight of one block of the Great Pyramid is, 8,000 tons. That was cut with, primitive tools, and has been demonstrated by modern archaeologists that such amazing things could be created by actual, Paleolithic tools. That's something I'm going to wager Kilgrave didn't know, but that's not what she tells him.
Right, and it's also not what he implied. I mean, context applies in this situation either. It doesn't matter what he says; it's what she hears.
Yeah,
So she knew he meant, give me something I'm going to want to know.
Well, yeah, and but again, I wonder if there's an aspect of this where she wants to tell him this thing. She almost as if I want to be acknowledged for how clever I am. That I was going to figure out this way to harness your powers. And that, even though she wouldn't normally tell him, she now has an in, It's like, I now have a way to do this. And, and we see this earlier, this same concept about how you can turn what Kilgrave says around. When he tells Patsy to put the bullet in her head.
Right.
And we see when Jessica comes back, she's trying to push the bullets into her forehead, which obviously you're not going to be able to do. Right. And then Jessica takes the bullet, puts it in her mouth, and says, "There, the bullet is in your head." Now, technically, he said, "Put the bullet in your skull." So, it's interesting. One wonders what orifices would have accepted if she could have stuck the bullet in her ear and say it's in your head. But the fact of the matter is that once they say it, once they acknowledge you've accomplished what he asked, then they're fine.
Right.
And it makes you wonder how often you could do something metaphorical, how often you could play on Kilgrave's words.
And also, I wonder if, after he leaves, but they've completed their one task, the virus is obviously still in the person. I wonder if you would be able to be controlled by someone else's voice.
Well, I'm guessing not. I don't think it puts you. I mean, essentially, that's one of those questions they've never really explored. But there seems to be. I think that it's sort of this idea that whatever, and for what it's worth, I mean, if you want to actually put real science into it, you can say that what they're basically doing is creating a CRISPR genome situation here. That Kilgrave is creating a CRISPR DNA rewriting software in the virus he exudes that essentially essentially it would only work for Kilgrave. So it doesn't make you suggestible. It just makes it so that when you hear Kilgrave's voice, it makes you want to be with Kilgrave. Essentially, it rewrites your DNA in this way, at least temporarily. And that's if you want to, if you want to try and create a tortured explanation. But yeah, they haven't really suggested that you're more suggestible under Kilgrave because, not for nothing, Kilgrave could say, go kill yourself, and then someone else could say, no, don't do that, and it would be just as powerful. If it was only an aspect of Kilgrave that it makes you suggestible, someone could undo Kilgrave's powers very easily. I think it is specifically that you feel compelled to do what Kilgrave has asked.
Interesting.
And to that extent, we get this craziness because, of course, we can also see here that, for what it's worth, Kilgrave is never going to honor his promises.
No.
And so making a deal with Kilgrave is foolish at its outset.
It's like wishing from a genie.
Yeah.
You know that it's going to be misconstrued and not to your favor.
Yes. And, we do see, Jessica reaches out to Hogarth and immediately realizes that Hogarth is compromised, does not give up the location of the dad, which is important.
Right.
And, it is pretty interesting, but our emotional culmination of this is essentially, the betrayal of Hogarth by Kilgrave when he looks at Wendy and says, you want a death by 1,000 cuts? Go to it. And again, a moment that Kilgrave isn't specifically telling her what to do, but there's a part of her that wants to do it.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting idea. When Kilgrave told Jessica at the very beginning, take care of her. How much of that was the fact that maybe, Jessica is a powered individual and there may be a part of her in that power that says, I want to unload, I want to let go. I want to unleash. There's a great bit when Superman is fighting Darkseid at some point. It's notably in the Justice League cartoon, but it's actually in the book as well. Of Superman just realizing all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I just realized I don't have to hold back when I fight you. I can punch you as hard as I want, and, I'm not going to worry about it right now. And that's a pretty scary notion when you realize the idea that, Superman has been holding back his entire life. And it is just as scary to think that Jessica Jones probably holds back constantly. And then in this one moment she decides, because she knows what Kilgrave wants is him dead. And or her dead, and she just doesn't hold back. She could probably have worked out something less than that, but she knows it's what he wants, and it gives her an excuse to do it. Which gets into a crazy area there too. But in definitely when we see Wendy and Hogarth go at it, this is definitely what Wendy wanted. Even if it's something she would never do, it's what she wanted.
I almost feel like after this experience, she'll probably be like, yeah, take the divorce. Whatever, I don't want your money. She, got it out of her system.
Well, yeah, we don't get to find that out because, of course, Pam comes in at just the right moment. Yeah, you forgot about that, huh?
I tell you, right. Oh, God.
Yeah, Pam comes in and... cast iron vase against the head, and then glass end table against the head.
Yeah. And
that was, honestly, I think one of the most disturbing scenes.
Yeah, I think this whole scene with 1,000 cuts starting from there was incredibly brutal and good God, wow.
Yeah. Well, this is a Netflix show, not for kids. Let's remember. But and it's like every time they cut back to Wendy's head on the glass table, and you see the little stream of blood dripping out. It's like, it was, I don't know, man. It was just some aspect, it's, if you ever read Lord of the Flies, big spoiler for Lord of the Flies, kids. So if you've never read Lord of the Flies, pause for about 10 seconds. There's this scene. There's this scene. If they pause, they'll just come right back at the same spot. But there's this scene at the very end when Piggy dies. And they talk about, and Piggy was the one, like the intelligent one. He was the guy who basically solved all the problems in it. Also somewhat manipulative, but there is the point about them bashing his head open and his brain spilling out, and it's like, that's really messed up, and that's very much the scene of her brain spilling out, etc. And then we get, again, speaking of arrogance, we get Kilgrave and Jessica together. Kilgrave going to Jessica's apartment.
Now that takes a lot of stones.
Yeah, well, okay, I love you too. Sorry, my son.
No, please.
Yes. Sorry.
So, Kilgrave at Jessica's apartment.
Yeah, Kilgrave at Jessica's apartment, and yes, it takes just an incredible, an incredible amount of hubris for him to go in there and basically say, okay, look, let's make this work out. Come on, you crazy kids. Let's find a way to make this work. And it doesn't go well for Kilgrave, to say the least, because he basically says, "Oh, hey, if you don't do what I say, a lot of people are going to kill themselves." And she kind of says, "I don't know these people. I don't care."
And it's really not on me. You're the one doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And we get a nice bit there about how Kilgrave sees things and Jessica sees things. And we get him talking about this moment. I believe it was this episode where we get the idea of the moment of the moment when he realized she fell in love with him, which was him counting down the moments, and then the moment when he knows she's free, and then says, "And for 18 seconds I didn't control you," which, honestly, 18 seconds of not controlling someone, not that impressive. And we get this idea that she wants to stay. But what she was actually going to do was to escape at that moment. But, to assuage him, she, plays the part for a minute. And then before she gets the chance to jump, he tells her to get down. And it's like, it is cruel and it is painful and it is horrible. And she does catch Kilgrave, but unfortunately, at the same time, Robin, Colby Minifee, Ruben's sister, who has at this point found out, the secret that her brother was murdered, and decides to turn the entire support group against Jessica. And they break in and they find her, and then they do manage to get into the room, and there's Kilgrave. After they knock Jessica out, I believe they hit her with something.
A 2x4.
Yeah, 2x4. They beat her hard.
Yeah.
And then you see Robin free Kilgrave, and our final scene is Kilgrave giving us a very evil smile.
Yeah.
And that's pretty messed up in that. Also in this episode, we got basically Kilgrave and... Okay, so actually, So I'm sorry.
Yeah, we also had Simpson
yes,
and Clemens.
Yes, Simpsons and Clemens, and we get the first real evidence that Simpson has gone completely unhinged.
Yeah.
And he makes this point because he wants to kill Kilgrave. And again, it has to do with this idea of this hero complex. He can't let someone else be the hero. He can't let Kilgrave be brought to justice because he doesn't believe in the justice system. He believes that someone has to kill Kilgrave, and he's the only one to do it. And he'll do whatever he needs to do, including killing Clemens to do it. And that's pretty messed up. And, of course, during this whole scene, we also have Jessica trying to track down where Kilgrave might be. Oh, actually, no, that's the next one, because that's after Kilgrave escapes, I think. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to that next episode. And by next episode, we may be jumping back and forth between which episode it happened in. But we're definitely, like I said, that's the thing. These episodes do run together because they are kind of meant to be seen kind of in a one after another scenario. So, Mozz, if people would like to talk to you about Jessica Jones, the Immortal Iron Fist, or any other show that's out there on the Netflix or anything else they might want to talk to you in genre fiction, how can they find you?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
Awesome. And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet all kinds of shows that are cool, like The Incredible Hulk, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Powerless, one of the best shows on television right now. Gotta talk that show up, I love it. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging out with us once more as we do the JonesCast. Please, we want to be your friend. We hope this podcast never ends. Good night.